Yes, at face value, the question is legitimate, and this question is actually quite a serious question as to whether they've been able to frame the question correctly in terms of existing laws is another issue. But in terms of some of the decisions by the Constitutional Court, in the general spirit of things, the question is correct. Now, this is the question that needs to be answered. We all know that Chancellor House, as an example, is an investment wing of the African National Congress. We also know, for instance, that in the ESCOM deals, they partnered with Itachi. So there's a sense in which companies like Chancellor House actually make money, but they make it directly from the state. So it's a way, one other avenue where the ANC can actually extract funds from the state and receive that money as donations. So that would be the issue. The other issue that these disclosures seek to address is that there are people who donate, rightly so, to actually influence and promote democracy in South Africa. But hopefully, when they do make these donations, they are not actually looking to control policy by capturing politicians or to then channel the expenditures of the state towards their own companies by winning tenders they should not be winning simply by becoming donors. So those are the issues around this issue, and it's still early days, and we're not yet mature in this.
All right, let's talk about coalition discussions now that are ongoing. Of course, the ANC being the party that everybody is watching because they stand more to lose or perhaps to gain as well around this. But do you think that the ANC will actually self-correct this time around, considering that at some point no one wanted to work with them, and now we know that they've completed their engagements with various political parties that they plan to enter into coalitions with?
Yes, I think their deal with the IFP is instructive. If you look at that deal that they've made with the IFP, basically the IFP, in as much as the supporters of the IFP are angry, some of them with the leadership of the IFP, but in many ways they've maintained their stance. Their stance being that they are not going to enter into co-governance with the ANC in municipalities. Where the ANC has got the highest votes but not the majority, they'll allow the ANC to run the show on its own, and the ANC will return the compliment. And it's a large number of municipalities. I think it's almost about 21 where this has happened. So that is quite a big step forward in terms of guaranteeing citizens some form of governance. But for the sake of the question that we are asking, it's a clear sign that the IFP does not want to sink with a sinking ANC. The ANC must make its own mistakes and continue with whatever without being joined at the hip with the IFP. So that is how that has gone. And then we've seen most probably around Gauteng and Ekurhuleni probably in particular, where we would have thought maybe the IFP, so not the EFF and the ANC could easily have made a partnership there. But again, the EFF has again run away from that and standing at a distance. So the ANC has got to find somebody who is prepared to risk their prospects in 2024 by associating with the ANC that might actually be failing in them.
In fact, IFP leader Babu Hlabisa made it a point to say, that they are in discussions and in agreements with the ANC, but it was very clear to say that it's not a coalition. Perhaps my question to you, moving forward, Sandile, is that given that it is inevitable that South Africa will find itself in a multi-party kind of governance structure, if I can call it that, what would it take, for parties to work in a cooperative manner, for the sake of service delivery in most of these hung municipalities and hung councils where the ANC has failed, to deliver services to communities?
Yes, I think the most important thing right now is for all political parties, including the biggest being the DA and the ANC. And the DA is probably a few streets ahead of the ANC in this. A recognition that the time of so-called outright wins and so on and dominant party politics is over. So you now need to accept that the governance systems in local government general and probably in certain provinces such as Gauteng in 2024, you are going to have, as you call the multi-party coalitions running the state, the affairs of state. So the first thing is to actually accept that nobody is going to rule alone or govern alone. That's the first step. The second step is what has started to happen, where people understand that you've got to be technical, which is why these coalitions around Swana and Johannesburg have been very slow, to be technical about what is this agreement, what is the content and concern of the agreement of the coalition, and how is the coalition going to be governed, and how are you going to resolve disputes in the coalition and make sure that it lasts the full term of 5 years. So that is where we are.
You know, the thing with coalitions that it's not a new, a system that has been used in South Africa since the dawn of democracy, really, since '94. We obviously saw it gaining its prominence in 2016, but there's real legitimate concern on the ground by South Africans who feel that we don't have the right kind of leadership once these coalitions are formed to make sure that, systems are then in place to run. So what would it take, for the right kind of leadership to be at play? And also, what are the consequences if we find ourselves back in 2016, particularly as it speaks to the large metros?
I think that in this discussion, you must remember that there's a study that was done by Professor SABC, and it also reports about his findings of the coalition in PE. The coalition that was formed by the DA in PE actually worked very well. But the problem that they encountered, like they did in Swana, is that the people who are outside, in this case, the ANC, kept throwing stones and trying to overthrow the people who were running the municipality properly. And eventually they succeeded. So some of these coalitions did not actually implode internally. There was the other party that had not won, which was disrupted. So, I was reading reports earlier on, like in places like Waters Kloof, Caledon area, where again, the ANC has not won, and the coalition is trying to launch their council. And again, at Umgeni, where you find that there's just a continuous disruption, not by the coalition itself, but by the ones who have lost them. So those are things that have got to be dealt with in the process of maturing the democracy. And the courts are probably having to play a role now to actually make sure that if a person has lost, a party has lost, they don't disrupt the coalition themselves.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Sandile, for that. The real question then, after that is, how will you hold your leaders accountable as a citizen? How do citizens stop talking about being active, but actually become active? And what are the channels that citizens can take, in that regard?
Yes. I will also include my personal experience in this. The way our philosophy and guidelines of running municipalities is supposed to be is that we're supposed to run the municipality on the back of what is called a ward-based IDP plan, which means that in every ward, the residents through the ward committee meet and decide that this is what we're going to do for sewage, roads, etc., etc. And all of that through all the wards is then consolidated into a municipal-wide IDP, a document, and then converted into a budget, and then converted into an implementation plan. Just to give you an illustration about where I stay, the ward committee in our area was dissolved 3 years ago by the Speaker and never reconstituted, which means whatever was planned here was planned only by councillors and their parties, and the residents had no participation. So it becomes important that us as residents and the youth in a ward actually insist that the ward committee be formed, and we participate in the detailed planning of what must go on, the budgeting, the implementation, and the control to make sure that what was planned is actually what is done. So we've also played a role in allowing municipalities to collapse as residents by not participating in the legally mandated structures that were supposed to be participating.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Sandile Swana, political analyst there, just weighing in on a couple of political issues, coalitions, including party funding. Let's continue.